welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And today we are doing chapter 15 of A Familiar Death. Marlot pressed back against his lion, enjoying the quiet, the smells, and the arms holding him. When they tightened, he knew Trembor was awake. Do we really have to get out of bed? Marlot sighed. Trembor nuzzled the back of his neck. Not really. We can spend the rest of our lives here if you want. Marlot shuddered. I want us out of this forsaken town as soon as possible. His lion hugged him. Then we need to get up. Marlot nodded, but didn't move for a few seconds. When he sat up, it was with a sigh. This place was sucking the life out of him. He finally stood, then jumped with a yelp as Trembor swatted his ass. Get that out of my face and go shower before I drag you back in this bed and do horrible things to you. Marlot glared. You're a bad lion. Trembor grinned. The very worst. Marlot shook his head and turned to hide the smile that appeared on his lips. He set the water hotter than normal and stepped under it, hissing for a moment and then finally feeling awake. Hey, Marl, does this town have a gym we can spar? Well, there is a gym. Good. So they'll have sparring ring? Not really. How can they not have rings? Are you telling me the people here use those machines to exercise? You'll see. Marlot smiled to himself, wondering how his lion was going to react. When he was done washing, he turned to the dryer, which just sputtered at him. There weren't enough towels to do more than stop himself from dripping, but then he was done. But when he was done, he felt like he was able to handle this town and the people in it. He stopped in the bathroom's doorway, watching his lion stretch. Slowly, Trembor extended his arms to the left, then his body followed, as if they pulled it. His muscles were taut and only became more defined as his arms moved down until they touched the floor. Marlot licked his lips as he looked at that ass. He was tempted to return the favor, but restrained himself. If he did that, they wouldn't leave this room anytime soon. He looked down at himself. His body certainly was in favor of spending more time in bed. You're a danger to my self-control, Trem. You know that? His lion straightened, turned, and took the few steps separating them. The wicked grin made Marlot back up until he was against the wall. You know what? Back until he was against the wall. And Trembor pressed himself against the wolf. Trembor leaned forward and nipped at his neck. Marlot gasped and entwined his fingers in the lion's mane. He felt the hand rub down his chest and stomach, but was still surprised when it continued lower. Within a moment of this treatment, Marlot was panting. His lion nuzzled his ear and whispered, Self-control is overrated. Then he stepped into the bathroom, leaving Marlot dazed. The water started in the shower, and Marlot shook the daze away with pure willpower. He looked down at himself again. Of course, now his body wanted the rest of what had begun. He was going to have that on his mind for a long time. Bad lion, he called. Bad lion. I'm going to have to think of a proper punishment for you. Laughter was the only response he got. By the time he managed to dress, after giving up on it going down, the water stopped running. Marlot turned to comment on what would be his lion's wonderful nakedness, but stopped halfway. A beam of sunlight sliced the air and shone in the carpeted room. Shone on the carpeted room. Shone on the carpeted room in. If on the carpets. Nah, shone. If I go on, I need it on the carpet. You know what? Shone on the carpet. Marlot let out a growl, cursed, and put the slate that had caught on the low table back in place. How had this happened? He'd been careful. Then he remembered slamming the door yesterday. He'd been too busy with what had followed for him to notice the light, and his morning must have been cloudy, otherwise the rising sun would have shone through the crack in the blind. When he turned, Trembor was watching him, wearing his face. Are you okay? I'm fine. And then he chuckled. Just a few months ago, something like this would have sent him panicking at the idea someone might have seen them. Now he was just annoyed with himself for not taking the time to make sure the slate had fallen in place. No one saw us, Marlot said, more to himself. If they had, they would have kicked in the door and tried to lynch us. His lion smiled. They're in for a surprise if they try that. Marlot nodded. Still, let's be careful. We're better off not asking for trouble than having to deal with the consequences. While Tremper dressed, Marlot pulled the bedding of both bed, pulled the bedding off both bed, balled them together, and put that between the beds. Tremor eyed the pile. You really think the person who cleans the room would notice? Like I said, better not ask for trouble. Muddle parked in front of Jaylee's, but they walked up the road to the second building, one covered with dark green bricks. In the only large window, Trimber could see a large room with mats on the floor, and he thought community center, like the one his grandmothers took him took him to when he was a cub. They went every week and gossiped with other older folks while the cubs played at a variety of social games. Marlot let him pass doors, some closed, other open, and confirmed this was a community center. He stopped at a large room, half filled with people, all predators, as he was getting used to seeing here. Seeing. They were paired, facing each other, and moved together. It took a moment for Trimmer to understand what he was watching. It was almost like they were fighting, but the movement were too coordinated. One person would perfectly block the other's attack, which came at a leisurely speed. A few of the couples moved so slowly, Trimmer wasn't sure why they bothered moving at all. What's what are they doing? Is this some sort of teaching class? Marlowe shook his head. They're sparring. That isn't. Timber stared at his wolf. That isn't sparring. At best, it's dancing. Look at her. He indicated a cougar standing with two cubs, a badger barely of predation age, and a tiger a few years younger. He was looking at her. He was looking at her with a besotted smile as she showed the badger how to block his arm with his arm. She stepped away, and they did the motion without her assistance. Interesting. That doesn't belong there. Marlowe's jaw tightened when he looked in their direction. It's still what they call it, but it's nothing more than exercise. None of them would know what to do if you jumped them. Then why do they call it sparring? Marlowe shrugged, then stiffened. The cougar had noticed them and was approaching. Arms wide and a bright smile on her face. Marlowe, it's so good to see you again. Marlowe took a step back, then caught himself. Don't touch me. She stopped. What's wrong? Now that she was closer, Trimber could see the gray in her tawny fur. She had to be in her 50s, if not 60s. Trembor, meet Arlene Darkpelt, the female who made a mess of my first heat. Trevor kept his expression neutral and fought the urge to grab her by the nape and lead her to one of the empty rooms so they could have a long talk. Marlowe, what are you talking about? She sounded confused rather than offended at the accusation. I didn't do any. Don't bother. Marlowe growled. I'm not a cub anymore, so stop pretending. If I thought it'd do any good, I'd tell the council about you, but your mother's still on it. Marlowe, you're making a big deal out of nothing. All I did was help you along, give you the benefit of my experience. Trevor couldn't stop the growl. Where I come from, we have a word for people who take advantage of cubs too young to understand what's happening. Abusers. She gasped. I never. Marlowe, tell that lion that I never took advantage of you. Marlowe laughed. The sound attracted the attention of people in their room. They stopped moving and watched them. I'm not going to lie for you. I was overwhelmed by my first heat. How was I supposed to know how things were supposed to happen? I was just like that tiger over there. My instincts were in control, and I would have fucked anyone who offered themselves to me. You made me believe I was normal. You believed that was normal, that I was a male, capital M, because because of how often I could perform. I kept going even when the heat faded, because what the fuck else was I going to do? I loved you, and that was what you wanted. When I finally couldn't do it anymore, what did you do? You didn't explain anything. You threw me aside. Good for nothing is what you said when I finally told you no. Well, noticed the audience they had, and Trevor prepared himself for his for his wolf to panic, but he didn't. He didn't even blush. He leveled his gaze on them, smoothed his jacket, and then turned to look at him. Anyway, this is what passes for sparring here. He didn't acknowledge the courtess when she gaped at him. If you want, we can probably use a corner and not get in anyone's way. Trembor studied the crowd, noting the confused expression on the young tiger. No, it's okay. We can manage without until we get back home. Marlot nodded and left. Trevor glared at the cougardess, then followed his wolf out. Outside, Marlot looked up, clenching and unclenching his hands. Did you know she'd be here? Trevor asked. Marlot shook his head. But I should have. This is where she hunts. We go there for exercise from the moment we can stand on two legs. So she's right there to smell it when the first heat gets close. How does she manage to stay satisfied? There can be enough young males there for her to always have one. She doesn't. She isn't like Aiden. She doesn't need to always have one in her bed. But when she smells one of us, she doesn't let him go until he can't keep up anymore. He began walking. I lasted 3 months once my heat faded. Some last longer. You know them? Bottle snorted. Like you said, this is a small town. Everyone knows everyone. So, yeah, I know. I know who they are. They're all the males around, my age and up. Maybe a decade younger. Sometimes I'm amazed at how normal they all are, considering she's our first experience. He opened the door to Jaylee's as Trembor began asking his next question, but Marlowe shook his head, making it clear he wasn't discussing it here. Taryn joined them as they were sitting in a booth. Morning. Marlowe nodded his greeting to the mongoose. We'll have whatever your father has made for breakfast, and ask him to prepare us a meal to go. Prepare us each a meal to go. We're going to be busy today, and we'll eat while working. She eyed him. You want what my dad made? Again? She placed a hand on his head and looked at him, at his ears. Are you okay? This is the fourth meal in a row. You haven't argued with him about the food. Trevor saw the effort it took Marlowe not to snap at the server. His wolf forced a smile. What can I say? The city mellowed me. Took a breath and raised his voice. And I know a lost cause when I smell one. Lost? Came from the kitchen. You're the one who's never had any sense. Marlowe took her hand and moved it off his head. I can survive his cooking. So what's the point in arguing? She gave him a suspicious look, but laughed and came back with 2 plates of sweetened meat and a glass of blood and fruit juice. Eating resettled Marlowe's good mood. When she brought them 2 boxes before taking away their plate, the smile he gave her was genuine. You're going to be happy, she said. He hasn't started on lunch yet, so you're getting simple meat with the sauce and individual containers. Marlowe gave her a skeptical expression and opened the box. I saw you do that. Came from the kitchen. If you don't trust my baking, go eat somewhere. Go eat elsewhere. I trust your baking, Trembor replied, having confirmed it was what the box contained. It's your sense of humor I don't. Ha! Like I'd ever do anything that would make food go to waste. Marlowe closed the box. Okay, you have a point. He paid for the food and they headed to Diego's clinic. He placed the boxes in the cooler in the corner of the office. Why did he have a warmer? Trembor asked, indicating the unit in the corner. Didn't he eat a J-Lo? Jelly? Nego always ate here when he was working. Meals brought meals bought from Jaley? I don't think so. Anytime I saw him here, it was something he'd baked himself. The only time I'd see him at the restaurant was with his family for a special occasion. Does he have children? His daughter joined the Protectors the year before I left. His son was studying in the city to become a medic. He didn't come back. If he had, he'd be helping us now. Have they been informed of his death? Marlot stopped and closed his eyes. He cursed quietly. I'm going to hope Arlington at least did that properly. I don't want to be the one telling them their father has been killed. Trembor nodded. It wasn't an RI's job to inform the family of the death. When the death was properly paid, the system informed them, but in an unclaimed death like this, the enforcers would inform them as they gathered information. Yuck. Trembors took a seat. How are we doing this? Now that we have full access, I'll send you half the files. He stopped as he started typing the transfer command. Or not. These are larger than I expected. Let's focus on those from the time around his death. If a patient is why he was killed, that'd be where they'll be. I can't. The date tags are all from this morning on all the files. How is that possible? Nahego must have a program set to run when the system starts. Didn't you check for that yesterday? No, I checked for corrosive program. This must be some sort of maintenance that's performed daily. Trembor worked through the implication. So we have to go through everything? Marlot sighed. Looks like it. Good thing you got us lunch. Trembor's pad beeped as he received files, and he looked at the first one. He found that the individual notes within the files were dated, and that let him discard any files without recent comments. They arbitrarily set 2 months ago as the cutoff time. They couldn't come up with a reason why it would have taken that long for someone to act on something that happened as part of their treatment or checkup. Even with that, and working while they ate, by the time they called it an end to it, they had only gone through half the files. Trembor stretched, making his joint pop. Your estimate of the population can't be right. There's way more than 500 files in there. He looked at the dregs of his meal and tried to work out how long ago lunch had been. His stomach said it had been long enough. Marlot collected their plates. I don't think he ever cleared out the old files. I saw names of people who died when I lived here. He was the town medic for over 60 years. That's at least 2 generations, so there might be as many as 1,500 files in there. Not to mention the sheeps he's seen. All right. Those consultations Orion mentioned. Although, I have to say I'm surprised he can't handle everything himself if he was trained at the academy. Marlot shrugged. I don't know. Maybe there are things the academy can't prepare him for. Although he said he wasn't comfortable at the academy, so maybe he didn't actually do all of them. Maybe his job didn't require as extensive an education as Nahego needed. Farmers don't usually get treated for severe stuff. They just go to the processing store. That idea still bothered Trembor. Marlot nodded. How about we go eat and get back to this afterward? Trembor smiled. I could go for more of Jaley's baking. All shook his head in amusement. He's going to ruin your tastes. Next thing you know, you won't be willing to gorge on prey in the office at floor anymore. You're going to require all those special sauces and spices. Tara placed an arm around his wolf and squeezed. You know that's not true. Those times are special in their own right, especially now that you no longer mind letting me lick you clean. Trevor licked his lip at those memories, and Marlot's ears turned red. And you know that I tend to enjoy more flavor with my meat than you do. That's what I'm worried about. You're not going to be happy with those normal sauces anymore. You're going to blow all our food budget on the high-end specialty ones. I'm going to have to learn to go lean because of how Jaley's feeding you. Trevor turned to face his wolf and placed a hand on his heart. I solemnly swear that I'll be the only one to suffer if I buy overpriced sauces. Marlot rolled his eyes. Like I'll be able to watch you suffer and not share my food. Trembor smiled. Well, that's your problem. You can always swear to let me suffer no matter what. Marlot pushed him against the wall. Don't you even joke about that. I don't want you to. I don't want to ever be the reason you suffer. I've made your life miserable enough already. Trembor placed both arms over his wolf's shoulder and gazed into his eyes. You never made me. I did. You don't have to lie. I was an insufferable idiot for letting fear keep you from demonstrating how you felt about me in public. And I'm sorry to have you have to refrain from doing it again, but I swear, once we're gone from here, you'll never have to hold back. You will be able to make me blush around strangers as much as you want. He kissed Trembor. The action took Trembor by surprise, but he got over it and responded in kind. When they broke apart, his wolf was smiling, his eyes slightly wet. I love you so much, Trembor. I want to run out there and smash all their heads in until they accept it. I hate that they remind me of how I used to be with you. Trembor kept him from saying more by hugging him tightly. It's okay, Marl. We'll close this case, leave, and you'll never come back. He released Marlot, and his wolf dried his eyes before straightening his jacket. Anyway, I couldn't let you go hungry. You wouldn't look this good skinny. Trembor smiled. I know. I'm really good looking, aren't I? Marlot sighed. You are such a bad lion. Trembor's smile broadened. I'm still waiting for my punishment. You just wait until we're back home. Marlot looked himself over in the mirror and smoothed out the fur in his face and his hand before heading out, Trembor in tow. As soon as they stepped outside, Trembor went on his guard. Something wasn't right. He looked around the desert street, trying to figure out what it was. While he couldn't see anyone, the feeling reminded him of the one time he chased a rat right into an ambush set up by her friends. Where is everyone? Marlot asked, sounding tense too. That was it. There was no one around. He hadn't been here that long, but he noticed how there was always someone moving about. Right now, there was none of that. Trembor's hackles went up. Is there a town meeting? Marlot shook his head. Those are after dinner. They headed to Jaley's, Trembor paying close attention to their surrounding. It wasn't often that he felt like the one being stalked. And this concludes chapter 15 of A Familiar Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, as well as the others in the series, they are available on all major e-retailer. And if you want to support me, that's on my Patreon, where you can get access to just about everything I've written. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.